I'm gonna focus on making $300,000 a year by the time I'm 30. That was a great goal, 300K by 30. Then I did it at 26, and I was like, so what's next? Now what? In 2013, when I was working at Google, I was just a little baby noogler at the time. I found this amazing, intelligent, chocolate skinned female software engineer while I was walking around campus. And then I asked her like where the rest of us were. And she laughed at me so hard. She legitimately thought that I was joking. And then she looked at my sad face and said, "Come here, honey, I'll take you to lunch." Because she had to sit down and tell me that on Google's huge Mountain View campus, where there's no less than 15,000 people working there, that the only female black software engineers could be counted on one hand. That's insane to me. But in 2014, companies around the Bay Area released their diversity numbers, and the number of black employees in tech is an abysmal 1 to 2%, give or take. And in 2019, the same companies released numbers and pretty much didn't change. And that's because black men and women are entering the workforce because there's an incentive to bring them in, but there's no real support when they get there. And why does this even matter? This matters because in tech, especially as a software engineer, you have to reach what's called a terminal level, which means you have to have at least 2 promotions to get to what's usually level 5, level 6 at some companies. If you don't get to those levels, then you have to get out. It's move up or move out. Hi, I'm Folashade, and I went to Carnegie Mellon University, and I'm a senior software engineer. Anyone who's still watching this video knows that diversity is important, but why was it important to me? It's because I was pushing through the prejudices of what a software engineer looks like and acts like on my own. I had to deal with wondering whether or not my name was too ghetto, and how to react when my coworkers called me falafel or faluka or shaniqua. I was just a nerd that wanted to code, and all that was just more added on top of a job that was already hard. After that summer at Google, I had no one to ask for advice and no one to really look up to who could relate to my experiences. Where were the other senior or experienced software engineers that could help me? They weren't there anymore. So I asked for help the same way anybody else would. I looked for mentors and I asked for advice. But one thing that I learned is you really have to analyze the source of your advice. And even though I was talking to other senior engineers or directors, senior directors, VPs, they were well-wishing white cisgendered men who had no idea about my experiences. They undervalued education and overvalued meritocracy. That if you just kept your head down and kept on coding, that you get promoted and everybody would see that you were doing a great job. And when I tell you that does not happen, that does not happen. You really have to advocate for yourself. You don't get the benefit of the doubt that some other people might get. You have to work twice as hard to just get half of what they have. So what did I do? I started a blog. Well, I tried. Like, the anxiety of it was overwhelming. What if I say the wrong thing and people who think I'm smart find out I'm actually not smart? And for a time, if you didn't make your own website or web application, you weren't a real one. How could I work on the web and not build my own website, right? It didn't make sense. And I figured out every tech procrastination, like figuring out what database to use or how to use another JavaScript framework, because there's always a new one. And I wrote all those blog posts because I wanted to get help and help others. But I didn't feel like I had a voice that mattered until I was a senior software engineer. And I explained why I feel like that later on in the video. Looking back on it now, it wasn't completely wrong, but the way I thought it through was flawed. I was looking for some sort of external acceptance or approval that I'm just never gonna get. I had to finally decide that if I was gonna be promoted to senior, I had to first feel senior. And that was really hard. When you're going to school, it's regimented. Once you pick a major, there's a specific path you can follow, and if you want to, you can make deviations, but it's pretty much laid out for you. But I worried all the time about whether or not I was picking the right major or what I would do after. And while I was in school, I mastered the art of classes and homework, which classes you don't have to go to. I figured out how to fall asleep on a shaky table so that it's kind of get that REM in. Table shakes and you're up. I had college down to a T. When you're going to school, that's the easy part. Like, school is hard, but that's the easy part. But I was worried a lot about how to make sure I get the right job. But there was a lot of resources to help me with that and other people that I could talk to because it was a medium-sized school. But once you graduate, you're on your own. That's when everything gets real. I got to the company and I was like, what do I do next? How do I get promoted? Is that even what you're supposed to be thinking about? And there was no one to mentor me with the same experiences. So I decided that I'm gonna focus on making $300,000 a year by the time I'm 30. And that was a great goal, 300K by 30. That was my catchphrase. And then I did it at 26. I still don't feel rich, and where does my career go now? And I was like, so what's next? What happens? How do you get where you wanna go when there's no path laid before you? I tried asking other Black female executives, but it never really matched up because they all needed an MBA. And I don't know why I would get an MBA if I just wanted to come out and keep coding. That didn't make sense to me. Where were the other Black female senior software engineers? And so I did what any Gen Z or a millennial would do in my place. I went to the internet, went on this weirdo website called YouTube, and I looked for some advice. Please don't get me wrong, there are a good amount of women in tech on the internet who are advocating and being public and sharing their experiences. However, I couldn't find anybody I could look up to. It felt to me then, and it still seems like that to me now, that the loudest voices that I could find were people who had just graduated from a boot camp or were really new to the career. So there was nobody who was actually a level above me that I felt like I could look up to, especially somebody who looked like me. Turns out it's really hard to find a mentor. So I decided to be the change you want to see in the world. And I want to be able to help other people who are struggling to figure out what to do in this tech industry. I want to help people who are trying to put the pieces together like I was, who feel like the advice out there isn't targeted to them. So now we're here. It's 2021, still senior. I worked at a medium-sized startup that turned into a large startup that went public. I am a 5'9" boss who can eat up an API, and I roller skate. So even if this video gets no views and no likes, there will still be another one. Because not doing something because you're afraid of failing is still failing in my book. I'm gonna take the advice of my inspiration Jarvis and take baby steps. And I'm gonna take the advice of my internet cousin, Evelyn from the internets. And I'm gonna not be afraid to be seen trying. So I hope I see you in another video somewhere, and I hope you keep me accountable. Thank you for watching.